Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Shogun episode 6. It's called Ladies of the Willow World. So spoilers for the episode. And that was almost a little tough to say in my accent. A lot of W's and a lot of L's and R's together. Not my strong suit. Yeah, so this was a more of a transition episode, I would say. There's some interesting things in it. It's a little bit uh, there's a couple of key things that I do really like and want to talk about, and I think that's been kind of the trend for this show for me, is that almost every episode I come out of and there's like one or two key ideas or key scenes that I really liked. I don't know if the heights of this one quite hit the heights of the last two or three where I was really positive coming out, but still some super exciting stuff that this one sets up. It fleshes out Lady Achiba, whose name I didn't know last episode because she'd been missing for like most of the show. But that is the daughter of the ruler that was killed before Taiko, before the recent ruler who died and left the son to grow up to be the heir. And that was the ruler that Mariko's father killed. And we also find out that Mariko and Lady Achiba spent time growing up together because they were all like, because Toranaga and Mariko's father were serving the ruler, Ochiba's father. Ochiba wasn't called Ochiba at the time. She kind of took that name after everything went down and the assassination and all that stuff. But, we get some flashbacks. It fleshes out all that. Honestly, it might even suggest that there were more than friends, that there was maybe even a romantic attraction between Ochiba and Mariko. Just the way it filmed, like the hand holding and like a tear down the cheek kind of thing. It felt like they might have been hinting at that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. It's very possible. That was interesting to see. That was definitely the one thing I needed or wanted after last episode, was more context for Lady Achiba, because she had been largely absent in the show up until this point. She was there, of course, early on, and this episode even hints that, because so she gave the Taiko the heir, right? She ended up being the mother. She's not the wife of Taiko, but she ended up being the mother of his heir. I don't know, I was getting some implications here that Taiko may not even be the real biological father. It sounded like he was having trouble conceiving, and that she maybe went around him to get pregnant. Maybe she went to someone else to get pregnant, and despite what everyone thinks, it's not actually his birth child. That feels possible to me. I felt like it was setting that up. I felt like it was teasing at that. What's funny is that normally I record these quite quickly after I've watched it, so everything's really fresh in my head. This is a little bit different because I ended up getting busy after I watched it. So it's interesting that my details on this episode might not be quite as sharp as normal, but it is interesting to see what remains, 10, 12 hours later, when I've been busy doing other things, what's remained in there, what's kind of kept circulating. And I think fleshing out Achiba's backstory, and it's interesting now because I'm excited to see when Achiba and Mariko see each other again, if they see each other again, like what kind of fallout might happen from that. And then pivoting from there into Mariko's stuff, we have her husband. He basically goes and apologizes to Toranaga at the start of the episode and says that he's clouded when he's around her. He feels like he's not himself when he's around her, that she really, like, he acts out a character, like he can't control himself around her, and Toranaga orders him to like stay away from her from a week. But the more interesting thing comes after, where it feels like Toranaga kind of gets the Blackthorn and Mariko have had something, that there's something going on, and there's other hints later on that other people are noticing that they are always together, that there's something brewing there. In fact, maybe there's not a lot of Fuji in this episode, but one of the best moments of the episode is a little comedy beat with her, where the brothel, what was the madam? Yes, the madam of the brothel, right? Which comes out of this plot line with Toranaga requesting that Mariko set up a night at the brothel for Blackthorn to take his mind off of all these things he wants, because Blackthorn's still going on about getting his shit back and attacking the Portuguese, and Tornaga's like, I'm having enough of this, I don't want to hear this anymore. But interestingly, he insists that Mariko go with him to the brothel, in case anything needs translated. And what's funny is that it felt like this was him, and it's like he knew what he was doing. I don't think he was saying this regardless of her feelings. I think he was intentionally provoking them into this situation so that they could develop, because I think he can tell. Now, whether or not he actually cares about their happiness, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think this is just Toranaga being a master strategist once again, and seeing that it's more useful that Mariko and Blackthorn are happy. And maybe more to the point, if Blackthorn's connection to Mariko keeps deepening, keeps tightening, and keeps becoming more strong, and he's in love with her, then he's probably not going to leave in quite the same way that he was before. He's probably going to have a reason to stay. And if anything, I think Toranaga might even see this renewed request to get his ship back and leave, and like, I've trained what I could. Like, I can't become the commander of the cannon regiment. Like, I'm not good for that. Let me go. It's almost like because Mariko's husband's back and Mariko's now giving him effectively the cold shoulder, the ties that maybe were starting to make him form a bond with this place and its people are kind of like turned sour a little bit. And then, of course, everything that happened with the gardener last episode as well. So it's almost like Toranaga's going out of his way to try and strengthen that bond. Now, whether that's because he thinks, oh, Mariko will be there and she'll get jealous, so she'll maybe make more of an effort with him, or maybe it's just a case of, oh, put them in an intimate situation that's erotic, and maybe it'll inspire some kind of, like passionate response where, I don't know if Toranaga is necessarily thinking, oh, they'll end up having a threesome at the brothel necessarily, but I think it's one of many possibilities that he's kind of hoping for will provoke them. And of course, one of the favorite things I have about this show, and one of the unique things that does make it stand out amongst other stories, is how much translation plays into the story, and how much translation plays into the characters. Because one of my favorite things about Mariko as a character is watching for how she chooses to translate things, because we get to read the subtitles, right? I mean, assuming you're an English speaker, of course. You get to read the subtitles, you get to see exactly what Toranaga, or later on the prostitute, and it happens to be the prostitute that's in a relationship with Yubashiga's nephew, right? So he's all jealous about this happening as well. But there's key moments where, past the episode, she's softened things a little bit, in both directions, where she'll take the edge off of something Blackthorn said because she knows it'll like offend people, or she'll try and change something for Blackthorn that's been said to him to make it seem a bit, I don't know, like there's been lots of examples of this throughout, and one of the best ones is actually later on. Well, there's a few obviously good things that come out of all this brothel stuff, but one of them is after it's all happened, and the prostitute is saying, we had a great time, there's something to that effect, but the main part was, oh, we hope you'll come back. We hope you'll come back and, use my services again. And Mariko very notably does not put that part in. She just says that, she just says it was a nice time, or it was an honor, or whatever. She doesn't add in the part where they are inviting him back at some point, that they hope he comes back. Now, you can read that, a number of ways if you want, but it does certainly would indicate at the very least that Mariko would not want him to go back and keep using the brothel. Of course, the more emotional scene that comes out of all this is the big speech, and this is probably the best piece of direction of the episode, is where Mariko is translating for the prostitute, and the prostitute is very sensual, right? And Blackthorn even points out the prostitutes in London are very different to what they have here in Japan. But she's talking about the title of the episode, she's talking about the Willow World and this sensual kind of idea of being and all that. And I can't even begin to remember half the things she said. But what they did here with the direction is that the where she sat in the room was kind of like elsewhere, right? And then the camera was looking at Mariko, and you could see the prostitute behind her, but then the camera just sort of just moves just enough that you actually see the prostitute go behind Mariko. She's not moving, but the camera just angles itself so that Mariko completely overlaps the prostitute, and she's translating for her. And you can hear the prostitute speaking in Japanese, and Mariko's translating English. But from Blackthorn's perspective, it's effectively his POV. It looks like it's all Mariko that's saying this. and the music ramps up. It feels quite emotional, and it really feels like a lot of what she's saying here maybe is something that actually applies to how she feels about him, but she's so determined to not like admit to it, and that comes up right before they go in, where Blackthorn tries to say, hey, if there's something between us, and then she's like, there's nothing between us. Like, she's very adamant about it. So she's bottling everything up. She's refusing to open that vulnerability up. All that character work's been very good. In fact, I never even mentioned what the funny bit was with Fuji sipping her tea, where the brothel mistress says, oh, people have been talking about you and the Anjin spending a lot of time together, and the camera just cuts to Fuji just sipping her tea and just looking over the cup. It's almost there's a lot of good examples of this in movies and TV. The one that comes to mind is a more tense version, but it's Jesse in Breaking Bad when Walt and Skyler are like arguing at the dinner table, and he's just sitting there drinking his water, looking from side to side. It's a little bit like that, where she's just sort of separate, like, that's none of my business. Like, she clearly knows everything. Toranaga, it seems like, knows everything. Mariko's husband even seems to be catching on that something's happening, and Mariko's refusing to accept any of it. So that's all super cool stuff. Again, some of my favorite scenes in the episode were this character drama, and then fleshing out the backstory with Mariko was cool to see, and seeing some key moments where she actually witnesses this like previous ruler, Ochiba's dad, looking like he is a bit of a psychopath, where he's just beheading people like like in a row, and it seems like Toranaga and Mariko's father were like talking about this, and it seemed like Toranaga probably was the one who ordered him to kill this previous ruler, that this was something he was involved in and is partially responsible for what happened to Mariko. And he also acknowledges with Mariko as well that Mariko is very smart. Mariko and him have this conversation during the episode where she what's it she says again? She says something to the effect of, men go to war for many reasons. Could be for bravery, could be for power, could be for political reasons. There was a few others, and then she said, but women are simply at war. And Toranaga is very impressed with the way she views the world, and talks about how her father had big plans for her, and that ultimately the hope was that she would one day finish what he was starting. Now, what exactly that means, I think, is a little open for interpretation, but it's certainly getting to this idea that she was showing capabilities in strategy and even combat in a way that was putting her above a lot of the up and coming like men that were around the same time. We see her training with Achiba at one point. Everyone's looking very impressed at her skills with a spear. So very interesting developments, I think, with all that stuff. And likewise, the Achiba side of this. It is interesting though. Like, I was very surprised how quickly it seemed like everyone was just kind of aware that she is pulling the strings, that she's the one who's working with Ishido. Because Ishido, we see in this episode, like, sort of like takes things up a notch, where he effectively takes all of the other regents hostage under the guise that there's a threat to the heir to the throne, and they all feel like they're hostages, and it's clearly this power play, and they're all very keenly aware that she's behind it. And the one regent who kind of denies accepting their new option for this fifth regent, they kill him, right? They massacre him and pretend that it was like bandits, but it's really Ishido in the woods with his men. It's all very kind of making these big plays, and like we literally see like a bird fall out the sky on fire from the fires that are happening in Osaka. And this is all to advance plot stuff. This, and we go back to, the old man, Toda, rides to the village where everyone is to tell Toranaga what's happening, and they talk about, I think it was called Crimson Sky, the plan that they might have to enact. And Toranaga doesn't want to do it, but they kind of define what it is. It's this idea that they would have to wage war on Osaka Castle and take out the regents and basically build a new government around Toranaga as the current kind of like sole regent and ruler, I guess. Now, whether or not they'd still plan on having the heir to the previous ruler rise up to Taiko's son, rise up and still become ruler when he's old enough. That was a little unclear to me, but super interesting. And of course, by the end of the episode, when it becomes clear that things are getting worse, Toranaga finally says, the cliffhanger is he finally says, yeah, all right, we're going to have to do Crimson Sky. We're going to have to do this. And they all kind of get, amped up and start chanting and whatnot. So, yeah, that's very much felt like I often call these episodes the moving of the chess piece episodes, where it's kind of putting a lot of things into play. It's advancing the Ishida and Lady Achiba stuff, and sort of like getting that side of things kind of set up for, okay, now episode 6 out of 10, we've kind of set up what I presume is going to be the big final conflict. Now, that's not to say that I don't think they're going to do this until episode 10. I feel like it will probably start in at least episode 9, if not 8. But kind of what the goal is now for the big power play, and obviously the word Shogun comes up, that he will be Shogun if he goes through with this and succeeds. So, very interesting, and it definitely plays again with this idea that Toranaga is being strategic in everything he's doing. And whether or not he's got completely noble intentions and all this, or if he does like the idea of ultimately being the sole ruler by the time this all ends. Because, back in that flashback in like episode 2 when he talks to Taiko, and Taiko says, what if I make you the ruler until my son's ready? And Toranaga says, no, that would just paint a target on me. They'd all come after me to take it away. It's almost like if he's playing 5D chess, he's come up with a solution that takes out all the other regions and then would put him in power ultimately at the end, which doesn't necessarily make him a villain per se. This might be for the betterment of Japan. Ultimately, he might truly believe he has the right goals in place, but yeah, interesting stuff. So yeah, I think it's another interesting episode. I'm really enjoying the show. I think it really helps at this point as well. Even though this episode is arguably less exciting than a lot of the other ones, by this point in the show, I'm a lot more invested in the characters and the relationships and how they're playing off of each other. Especially, obviously, Blackthorn and Mariko, and Fuji being this great character in there. Yabashiga, of course, is still very entertaining to watch, and his reactions to things are pretty good. The episode more or less starts after some flashbacks with Toranaga making a speech for everyone who died in the earthquake, and this is where he gives Blackthorn this new position and even like a yearly salary, effectively, which doesn't sound like he's planning on letting him leave anytime soon. We're going to give you a yearly salary. Sounds like we expect you to be here for quite some time yet. So, and of course, just because Toranaga is playing the hand that he's dealt and trying to strengthen this possible connection between Blackthorn and Mariko for his own good, that doesn't mean the connection between them is any less real, or that they don't have genuine feelings, and that it may not also be in their best interest to end up together. But it is very clear, I think, that Toranaga is playing these cards because he sees what's on the table, or maybe chess pieces is a better analogy. He sees the pieces on the table, he sees how they could be linked together, and how that would strengthen certain elements, like keeping Blackthorn there to run part of his military. And maybe part of that is because he knows that Blackthorn won't try and take over Japan after. He doesn't think, unlike some of the other regions and stuff who want Japan for themselves, Blackthorn seemingly probably wouldn't want that. So maybe that's why there's some level of appeal of having him being in a reasonably strengthened position amongst his own hierarchy, if you will. So no, super super interesting stuff. So yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 6 of Shogun. Yeah, still loving the show. We still have 4 episodes left. We're only just over halfway, so there's still plenty to sink our teeth into. Like I say, very emotional scene at the brothel. And then again, always a little bit of comedy that comes with some of this stuff, with watching how they react to each other when she's choosing to translate or not translate stuff. Is very, very good. So yeah, that is my thoughts on the episode. So let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that usual stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do. Like I say, I watched this one a little bit further back than I normally do. So if I missed anything, by all means, bring it up in the comments. And I'll give any further thoughts if I have them. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. I can't speak now. You can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support the channel and all the content and help keep it all coming. But otherwise, that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?